All the mistakes that we could have made were made in this quilt. Today I want to talk to you about the courage to start your very first quilt and even the smallest project that you can find. You can start with a charm pack. Those are the pre-cuts that are 5 inches wide. So when you finish your quilt, once you start sewing these together, they will finish at 4.5-inch squares, discounting the seam allowance. But this quilt, specifically I'm going to demonstrate today, has been sewn by my 7-year-old son, and he has never sewn before. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes. And I want to show you that even though the seam allowance is all wonky, nothing is a 1/4 inch, nothing matches. I will even show you the sewing machine that he used. Can still get a very effective quilt out of this. From the 40 squares that were included in the charm pack, he used 36 of them to make this beautiful quilt, and the remainder 4, we decided to make a little mug rug. So this was his idea. He wanted to make something for Santa Claus so he can put on his table as a table topper or hang on the wall. This is his very first quilt, and the machine that he used does not have a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and we didn't even talk about the 1/4 inch seam allowance within this. I want you to notice how beautiful this is, and I want you to look at the intersection of these seams. As you can see right here, the intersection of the seams is great. If you look at this one, we have about a 1/2 inch, maybe 3/8 of a gap between these seams, but this does not take away at all from how beautiful and how proud he is that he has made this. Towards the edges, you're actually going to see that there's a pretty big gap where all of these seams did not line up, and we didn't even try to line them up. The point of this evolution was to get all of these squares sewn together. So what's going to happen with this edge, because we're not making something that is perfect, so we're not making something that has to come out to an exact size, we're going to just simply trim this after we quilt everything together. So that's not something that we're worried about right now. If we look on the back side, some of these seams, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit here, some of these seam allowances are pretty big, some are really, really small. It doesn't matter in the end for this particular quilt, because once we iron it, you'll see if we stretch it, then yes, it's not the same size. But once we iron it, I'm going to gently iron it over, and then I'm going to quilt over this, and Santa's not going to know the difference. Some of these seam allowances are fairly wide, some of them are fairly narrow, some of them match or don't match, but that is okay. I want you to pay attention to this seam allowance right here that is about as wide as my finger, and the important part was that these 2 pieces of fabric were stitched together. So what we're going to do next is I'm going to iron this, and if the seams are not fully straight, I'm going to do my very best to iron them straight, and I'll show you how to do that, and then we're going to quilt the top. So we're going to take a break right now, and I'm going to take you to the sewing machine and show you that. My son wants to show you how the sewing machine works, so he's going to talk about a few of the features.
Okay. When this bit is with A, it does this. When it's with B, it does this.
Now, one thing that I want to show you about this machine, and I'm going to get really close so you can see, is the presser foot. The presser foot on this machine has a little finger guard, so it prevents little fingers from getting in there, but also the width of this presser foot, which cannot be removed unless you undo the screw, and I'm not going to do that. The width of this presser foot is actually a little bit more than a 1/4 inch, so we were not really worried about the 1/4 inch seam. What we really wanted to do is ensure that we maintain the alignment between our fabric and the edge of the presser foot. First, I'm going to iron this little mug rug. As you can see, it's a little bit crooked and it's not perfectly square, but we are going to square it off once we quilt it. So I'm just putting my iron down on this, and even though this seam is actually longer I did make a little fold here because, like I said, I'm going to quilt right over it. Santa's not going to know the difference. The importance of this project is for everything to be sewn together and for my son to have something completed, accomplished, and be really proud of himself. What, baby? All right.
Is it burning?
It's a little bit warm, yes. All right. This is what it looks like from the back side. And I'm going to do the exact same thing with the big piece. The seams are not nested. This is pretty bulky because of those large seam allowances. But once I put the weight of the iron on first on it, it's just going to help flatten everything down. It's already flattened down. I can see right here that the seam is probably a little bit twisted on the back, and I was right, and I can come back and fix that in a little bit. But right now, I just want to get everything level because this will help flatten down all of those curvy seams where they were not meant to be curvy. Right here, we have one of the seams that is a little bit curved. So if I were to pull these together, you can see that my fabric would be curved because this is not a straight seam on the back side. It's a little bit curved right there. So the way I'm going to trick this is I'm just going to smooth it out with my hand, make sure that that piece of fabric is flat, even though there's a little pocket there, and that's a big no-no in the quilting world. But again, I'm going to quilt over this, and Santa's going to absolutely love it. Right, buddy?
That is correct.
That is correct. I am not pulling on any of the fabrics trying to smooth them out. I'm just pressing them down. On the back side, you're going to see that all of these seams have different stitch lengths. They have different directions. Some of them are clipped like that. We didn't even trim the threads on the back. But what I'm going to do is try to get these seams as smooth as possible, even if they're twisted. Normally you would not do this, but for this particular quilt, again, perfection in this quilt was not our purpose. It was making sure that everything fits together. So because the seam is twisted, the best thing that I can do is literally iron it halfway through and make sure it stays flat. Actually, I can iron this seam in the opposite direction. There we go. Here, because I pressed it from the front, you'll see the seam goes in one direction and it switches right here. I can easily fix that just by flipping this over. And that ensures a little bit of consistency when it comes to the seams. But we are going to heavily quilt this on the top. For the backing of this quilt, we are choosing to go with this fleece. It is pretty padded. We're not going to use any batting, so that makes it even easier for a little child to make a quilt. The good part about this fleece is that it's a little bit grippy, so the fabric does have friction and it sticks to it, but I also used 505 temporary adhesive spray for fabric, just a quick coat to attach it to the backing. And now we're going to go to the sewing machine and quilt it. I'm going to select the biggest, widest, wavy stitch. And again, because this is something that is very easy, I can just go all over the place with this. The point is to get the top of the quilt attached to the fleece. And here we go. All I'm doing right now is holding it up and trying to guide it over, over these seams. My bobbin is running low. I'm going to continue sewing with this. Just press play again until I run out of thread. This is what it looks like. You do see a little bit of wrinkles, but these will smooth out, and you can also smooth them out with your hand. And I'm going to refill my bobbin now. I'm going to use this wavy line on top of every stitch so it flattens down all these. This is an amazing machine. I absolutely love it. Unfortunately, I did have to purchase afterwards the googly eyes and the eyelashes. All right, focus, dear. Okay, it's lined up now. All you have, okay, just press play.
Where's that? Here?
Mm-hmm.
Bing!
Cut it. There you go. One thing to keep in mind is that if you're planning on washing this, the cotton, because it's a natural fiber, is going to shrink a little bit. It's going to distort just a little bit as you're washing it, whereas the fleece may not. So if you want it to stay put as much as you can at the same dimensions and you don't really like the crinkly look, then you can quilt this a lot. All right, so we're ready to start the next few rows.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. How fast does this go? Extra speedy fast? Yikes!
So when I quilted this, I chose the wavy line. I chose to do straight onto the seam lines, horizontal and vertical. So you'll see a crosshatch pattern, but also I went in a diagonal pattern. So it creates this whole mess of quilting. You can kind of see the pattern that it gives it. If we wash it, this is going to be really wrinkly and really pretty, but from what we discussed before, all those seams that are not matching or anything else, everything has been flattened down now. I'll show you the back a little bit so you get an idea of what that looks like. Beautiful wavy lines. You can see the intersection of those lines. It's fine, and actually my son helped with this a lot. Because my sewing machine was automatic, he was able to just click the button, kind of guide the fabric through, guide this quilt sandwich through, and then cut the thread. I do want to show you a little section right here. As you can see, there's a pretty consistent pattern of these wavy lines. If you're just letting this guide itself through, let your machine guide through. But if you're holding on to it, or you're kind of pulling on the fabric and you're not letting those feed dogs take the quilt into the machine properly, then you end up with something like this. This is where my son was trying to guide the fabric, and it's fine. It looks absolutely perfect. I do want to show you what I did with the mug rug. This one, because it's a mug rug, I chose to have this quilted a little bit more. So I also went in, aside from the seam lines, I also went into the middle of these squares, horizontal and vertical as well. So it's quilted a little bit more densely, and you can see the beautiful pattern on the back. Next, what we're going to do is cut all these edges in a straight line, and then we're going to bind it. And I'm going to bind it with this little striped fabric. I really like binding my quilts with striped fabric, so this is just some leftovers I had from a different quilt. I'm going to show you how to cut this. So the way I like to do that is I'm trying to find a center line. Of course, this is all wonky. So I'm going to use this as a guide. I know that I have 4.5 inches on this side, roughly, because remember my seam allowance is not actually 1/4 inch. So I'm going to see what is the most that I can get out of this. So I'm at 4 inches now. Let me see, if I go to 4.5, I'm getting really close to that green. So I can kind of do 4.5 on this side. Let me turn this around and see if I have 4.5 available. 1, 2, 3, 4.5 to the same reference line. I could. It comes up to here, so I'm kind of running out of fabric, but this is where the binding will catch on. So I think I'm just going to cut it at 4.5 all the way around. So this will be a 9-inch finish. So lining up my 4.5 inch line with that straight seam line. Trim all of this off. Get a new rotary blade as often as you can. Rotate. Create a 90-degree angle from this cut line to the vertical one. So any horizontal line on your ruler will help you create a 90-degree with a straight edge. So you can definitely go with the bottom of the ruler. I just find it difficult sometimes because this is going to gently shift and you can't always notice that. So I like to use one of the drawn lines on my ruler as a visual guide. So I'm going to line that up with exactly the cut that I have made. And I'm going to look all the way to the top and see if it's going to actually cut through all my fabric. And it's not, because this red one is a little wonky, so I'm going to move it a little bit more. All right, so I'm just going to cut this off. And now I have a 90-degree corner here, and you can actually put it onto your cutting mat to make sure it's 90 degrees. And you're going to repeat the process. Yes, baby. What's wrong?
The washer was going too hard, and
Did you call a grown-up?
I was going to tell you.
Oh, it sounds like it's doing okay now.
Something was actually moving on the top of it.
Because I have this scrap binding, I'm going to switch over to my regular foot. It's not a 1/4 inch foot. You can if you want to. But again, this is a very beginner, very forgiving type of project. So I'm switching to the one, oh, that's not the one. 0 is the one that my sewing machine comes with as default. I'm going to change my stitch to just a plain straight stitch. 2.5 millimeter stitch length, which is basically the basic sewing machine default stitch. And I have a very detailed video on how to attach binding. I can show you and link it down below, but I'm going to quickly walk you through this. And I'm going to show you on the small project on how to make this binding. It's going to be identical onto the big quilt. So when I get started with the binding, I'm going to line up the raw edges of the binding. This is assuming that you've already made your binding. So this is 2.5 inch wide, folded in half and ironed. Those raw edges right here, I'm going to line them up with the raw edges of my project. When you start stitching, you want to leave about 6 inches of overlap because this is a small project. And we're going to start somewhere in the middle of the mug rug. So I'm just going to line up these raw edges. So if you are looking up close, this is going to be your fleece, the quilt top or the mug rug top, and the 2 edges for your binding. My thread is the same that I use for top quilting. I just didn't want to change it. My regular foot, 2.5 inches. You can measure a 1/4 inch, but actually I'm just going to use the edge of my presser foot. Usually that is about 3/8 of an inch. So let me make sure my camera focuses on where it needs to be. Leaving this gap, leaving this excess, I'm going to get started right about here. And I'm going to stop, kind of eyeball, pretty much the same distance from the bottom. I'll show you. When you do begin stitching the binding, you want to go back and forth, or if you have a secure stitches function like my machine does, you can use that as well. I'm going to put my presser foot down and start stitching, and I have a reverse button here. Now, I should probably slow this down a little bit so you can see what I'm doing, even though I usually stitch at tornado speed all the time. My fingernail is kind of holding right here the edge, the lip, where the end of that mug rug is. So I'm going to try to stop a little bit with 3/8 of an inch, basically the same distance between my needle and the edge of my presser foot. If it's not perfect, it's fine. As you can see, I can feel it with my fingernail. Take a peek. I kind of want to stop right there. Basically, I'm creating a tiny little square in the corner. So right now, this is the edge of my fleece and my needle is right here. So this distance between, if I were to draw an imaginary line from my needle parallel to this edge, it would basically be the seam allowance. So at this point, I'm going to rotate this where the very 90-degree corner is pointing towards me, and I'm going to stitch right through it. Now, I'm going to rotate this onto the next side that I want to stitch. I'm going to grab my binding, flip it upside down, and it's creating this beautiful kind of flipped over corner. Well, because everything on my mug rug is 90 degrees, half of this would be 45. So when I flip it over, the goal is to align these raw edges to continue that straight line. When I do that, this corner will naturally fall and create that beautiful 45-degree corner. All right, so again, flipped over. As you can see, all those stitches are holding that in place. I'm not pulling on it, but I am flipping it all the way. Make sure this corner is at 45 degrees. Again, no pins. I'm just holding this with my finger right here. Finger press that. As I finger pressed it, I held it here at 45 degrees. Now I want to make sure right here in this intersection, I'm going to hold that with my fingernail. Bring this back down. But as you can see, I am not pulling it down all the way. My finger is still holding there. I basically did a really nice fold right here, and this is what it should look like. And you can always arrange it with your finger. So we had the 45-degree angle. I held it right here, bring it back down again, lining this edge of the binding with the raw edge of the mug rug. Just let it fall. Right here at the top, since I brought this back down, it creates a straight fold. Hold it. And then, if everything is lined up here, I should have a little flap. This little 45-degree flap, the folded edge will line up perfectly with that top line of my mug rug. But if I gently fold it over this way, this will also line up with the edge of this. So that's basically creating that really pretty 45-degree angle there, and we do want this little flap to be folded just right. Again, I am not pinning this. I'm going to just hold it with my finger. This is what it would look like from the top. This is what it looks like from the side. And this is what it looks like from this side. Hopefully that helps make sense. I stopped right here because I'm running out of binding, so this is not going to be enough to continue covering. So I gave myself some slack so I can continue attaching this piece of binding back to this one while I'm working on the project. And ta-da! We can continue now. All right, so I have 4 little corners. So pretty. It's going to look gorgeous. Next, I want to join these, and I'm going to show you my cheater way of doing this. First, we're going to cut the binding. And now I will kind of pull these back and see where would I want them to meet. So halfway would be a good way, kind of right there. See that? Finger press. So we have created that. Finger press it. And then I'm going to cut out of this one, just like maybe ½ an inch out of that area. What is she doing? I'm breaking all the rules. That's what she's doing. Remember where I finger pressed it? right there. Okay. I'm going to unfold it. I still remember where that finger press is. Of course you can mark it, but you can still see it. And I'm going to fold this in like that. And I'm going to try to create this really nice corner with that edge folded in. And guess what? I'm going to cut this just a little bit more so it's not too bulky. I'm going to make sure that this one is all the way up. Fold. Oh, thanks, buddy.
I'm not doing it.
You're not doing it, thank you.
10 of these.
Uh-huh. 10.
And one black was like sticking out so far
Oh, okay.
away from the rest of the...
You can go back to playing, baby. Can I continue this now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we have that folded. Tuck this in, and we're going to stitch right over all of those. Now you're wondering, is there a gap there? Yes, of course there is a gap. But all that gap is going to close when we stitch this on the back side. So fun fact, I actually did not have enough of this binding to finish the whole quilt. And note to self, measure next time or just wing it. So I finished stitching the binding to the little mug rug, and I've also finished stitching it to the quilt. And this is where you can see here where I joined it because, you know, I didn't measure it and I ran out. To be able to stitch it to the back by machine, again, I have in my binding tutorial exactly how you can do that. I'm going to use either craft bond, which is as a precision tip, so I'm going to use this one. It's almost empty. I'm going to use it all up. Or you can actually use a glue stick, the school glue. As you can see, this one has been loved a lot. But first, before we do that, I'm going to iron these all the way up so we can get that flat. Now that everything has been ironed on the front, flip it over to the back. All right, so use my finger, poke those up. And then I'm going to get my glue and use my fingers to fold this over. Remember, the folded edge of the binding has to go past the stitch line. And this way we will make sure that it gets caught on the front side as we're stitching through. Okay, so now you're going to do the same thing with the big quilt, and I'll see you at the sewing machine. I'm going to show you on the little mug rug and then repeat that on the big quilt. For this, I am going to use a stitch and a ditch foot. It has this guide in the middle, so it's going to follow a natural groove onto your project. I like to put my thread through the middle of my presser foot. So the natural groove of this project, it's going to be right here, right on the edge of this. As we're stitching on that side, that's basically the exact same stitch line that we have done. We're trying to get as close as possible in there. That means on the back side, we should, in theory, catch everything in the back, on the back. And the mug rug is done. I'm going to flip it over. Moment of truth is, did I catch all the binding on the back side? Okay, okay, okay. I did. Wow, that doesn't ever happen. There's always a mistake. But the mug rug is done, and you're going to do the exact same thing with the rest of your quilt. So if you're super confident like me, I didn't say skilled, I said super confident. Two different things. And you like to stitch everything at tornado speed, then this is what you might end up with. Some of your stitches might perfectly be in the ditch. Others might be a little bit off. Others might be over the binding. But as long as on the back side you have caught everything with your stitches, whether or not it's even, Santa's not going to look, then you did just fine. All right, so this is now complete except for cutting these extra threads hanging everywhere. But what I do want to show you, as you can see, it has a little bit of wrinkleness to it. If you like that, that's great. I like mine super flat, so sometimes I just quilt these a lot more. But because, remember, we talked about this being a little bit synthetic, it might melt a little bit if you use the iron a little too hot. I'm going to actually use my iron and I'm going to do one pass over the front. I'm not going to press, I just want to heat everything up and flatten it down. So I'm just going over the surface, and as you can see, as I'm going over, somehow the top of this kind of shrinks and it makes it look a little bit flat. And why I like this is because this is going to be a wall hanging or a table topper. It's not going to be a quilt that we're going to be snuggling with. And if you look at this closely now, you'll notice, well, one thread. If you look at this closely, you're going to see that all of those imperfections that we have had before, all of the seams that didn't match, like there, or there, or there, all of the crooked little rows, all of the giant seam allowances, none of that matters because we have ended up with a really, really beautiful finished product. And once I trim all of these threads, the table topper will be done and ready to gift, along with a little mug rug. This is not a project that asks for perfection. This is a project that is intended to get you to go into your closet and get your sewing machine out, dust it off, and just go for it. As you can see, all the mistakes that we could have made were made in this quilt, and you cannot tell the difference.